Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the summit. I'm really excited about the presentations today. You are currently attending Always Bring Your Dice, Reimagining Training with Disability-Focused D&D. And we have Alex Nicholls here with us to present. I am your moderator. My name is Leslie Kraft. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with shoulder-length hair and a green blazer, and I am wearing glasses today. Please feel free to tweet and share the happenings at the summit. You can follow us at INCL Disability, and you can use hashtags IDGS, hashtag including disability, hashtag 2023 Disability Summit, or hashtag Hope Punk, preferably all of them. Pursuant to Maryland law, we're providing verbal and visual notification of recording. If you continue to participate, your consent to recording is implied. American Sign Language interpreters' video will be displayed during the entire presentation. Attendees can pin videos or remove interpreters from screen as desired. For a better view and experience, we recommend you use a desktop device versus a mobile app. Zoom captions are automated, or you can view the captions in an external window by selecting the link in the chat. Please post all questions to the chat. We will select a representative sample of questions for the presenters to answer in order to conserve time. Now, I would like to welcome Alex Nicholls to introduce and describe themselves before beginning their presentation. We also ask presenters with slides to describe the images being presented.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Alex Nicholls. I am a registered psychotherapist qualifying and art therapy student at the Toronto Art Therapy Institute. I go by the pronouns he, him. I am a white male in my 40s with short, dark brown hair, blue eyes, a beard with some grays beginning to show, and I'm wearing a white and red plaid shirt today. My accent is a jumble from the UK and living 15 years in Canada. I also have my co-facilitator and co-presenter here today, Leanna, who will introduce herself now.
Hello, my name is Leanna Scheitrowsky. My pronouns are she, her, and I am also an RP qualifying TADDY student. Today I'm wearing a green knitted sweater and a turquoise colored shirt. I have long, dark brown hair, dark hazel eyes, semi-dramatic winged eyeliner, as well as 2 piercings on the left side of my nose. I also wanted to acknowledge the land on which Alex and I work and live. I know we're coming from all over, but I just wanted to mention that we are from Toronto or Takaranto, which is the traditional and unceded territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. Home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, including status, non-status, Inuit, and Métis, alongside immigrants, refugees, and settlers who have come here by choice, by force, or otherwise as a result of colonial and imperial processes. As a settler myself on this land, I offer this acknowledgement with gratitude and respect as part of a larger practice of ongoing learning, reflection, and action around anti-racism and Indigenous solidarity.
Thank you, Leanna. In this presentation, we will explore how role-playing games, such as Dungeons and Dragons, can be applied in various supportive capacities. We're going to be focusing particularly on those skills and resources that can be offered through accessibility support services. Role-playing games are increasingly being recognized as useful and effective ways of providing for participants to develop skills, including social skills and problem-solving skills, to access resources such as community and advocacy support services, and nurture hopeful imagination by building resilience and opportunities for innovation. Today, we want to share with you some of the outcomes from some workshops and sessions that we conducted with the staff of Ontario Tech University, both from the game and from the real life impact of the lessons learned. We're going to focus on 3 specific areas as we go through our presentation today: the impact on the individual, including new skills learned and new ways to express oneself, impact on the group, including accessing collaborative resources and gaining new perspectives, and the impact on the imagination, including the discovery of new possibilities and opportunities. These skills are of great use to everyone, but can be particularly significant to those engaging in accessibility support services. The opportunities that role-playing games provide are invaluable to developing and testing newly acquired skills and resources in a low-stakes, in-game practice environment. Role-playing games provide a unique opportunity where story is the focus, and like real life, success and failure are just new experiences through which we navigate and adapt.
Also, Alex, just jumping in, we're not seeing the slides, we're seeing a different screen.
Oh, I am sorry. Apologies for that. Is that better?
Perfect, thank you.
Apologies for that, everyone. So slide 1 states just a game and has the subheading play as learning. Role-play games like Dungeons and Dragons are games based in imagination. They're games about creativity and finding new ways, whether as an individual, finding new ways to express oneself, as a group, finding new ways to be resourced and to provide resources to your community, or by accessing your imagination to find new ways to discover what's possible. We are all encouraged to find these new ways. Indeed, those who experience unresponsive accessibility systems or the challenge of being forced into the so-called societal norms, like those in place surrounding employment opportunities and interviews, are often those who both develop the incredible new ways of being and require support in accomplishing new ways of navigating such broken systems. It's our belief that role-playing games allow for participants to engage with hopeful imagination, developing new perspectives and skill sets, leading to positive growth. Dungeons and Dragons is probably one of the most well-known tabletop role-playing games. And a role-playing game is like an overlapping choose-your-own-adventure story, where participants of the group explore a shared narrative. Participants take on the role of imaginary characters in a world that's crafted for them by the game facilitator, sometimes known as the Dungeon Master or DM. Participants then decide what actions their character would perform as part of the game story, the outcome of such actions being decided by a combination of dice rolls and the assigning of skill points. In some ways, role-playing game exploration of story mirrors techniques in different types of therapy and support services, such as narrative therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and internal family systems, and others. By encouraging the exploration of gaming stories, new possibilities emerge within the player's own self-narrative, the story that they take upon themselves. This has the possibility of encouraging new behaviors, new feelings, and new beliefs. When we share our stories, we get a chance to express, this is me, experience me, know me. This is how I see that change might be possible. A popular question that we have among new players to D&D is, can I do this particular thing? And in our games, we encourage people with the phrase, you can certainly try. D&D is not about succeeding. but instead it's about having the bravery to ask for the opportunity and then rolling to see if it becomes reality. And so it was that we chose role-playing games and invited the support staff of Ontario Tech University to explore the potential use of storytelling and gamification in accessibility support services. Today, we welcome you into this space of imagination, a space for trying new things, a space where we succeed or we gain experience.
Thank you, Alex. So the next slide is blue D20, as well as the title Embracing Characters, Finding Inner Skills. So in a well-run game of D&D, the player can see their experience from their character's point of view and vice versa. The game, the fantasy nature of it, the imaginary world, and the characters that move through it, they all work to create a bit of a buffer or emotional distance from the given situation, allowing the person playing the possibility to make choices in the game that they might never think to make in their day-to-day real life. Through the game, and the stories told within it, we can help each other shape meaning from the characters, the plots that we encounter, so we might be able to experience triumph and navigate failure in a collaborative, supportive space. So during our time at OTU, we played D&D with a handful of staff, created characters with them, and explored an imaginary game world with the hope that they might be able to integrate any related benefits of the experience into their own work at the university. So now, what happens when you ask a group of people who have little to no experience playing D&D to create fantasy characters for themselves? Well, you get humanoid reptiles, warrior fairies, druids that feel most comfortable in the shape of an owl, and unicorns, like literal unicorns. And that's so fantastic because when we use our imaginations and are supported and celebrated for being playful and ask ourselves, what would I, a unicorn, do? We open ourselves to new ways of doing things, and we shift our mindset from what is known to what is possible. So you have an imaginary space with fairies, unicorns, and all sorts of fantastical characters in it. Now what? Because we're playing a game, D&D has mechanics and structures in place that help facilitate whose turn it is and what they can do in that space. The rules of the game, there are rules that gamify social interactions, problem solving, and even help define your social and special role within the party. In the case of OTU, we had two players who both wanted to play druids. There was worry, is there space for both of us to have the same role? And there absolutely was. The players found uniqueness in their overlap because the players, and by extension, the characters, were coming in with different perspectives, different ways of looking at problems and finding solutions. And even though some of the abilities did overlap, the playstyles and the choices the characters made were so different. Many of the characters that the players made came from either isolating or lonely backstories. All the characters coming into the game were self-sufficient and capable of doing incredible, heroic deeds on their own. So how does this all come together to create a cohesive adventuring party? Next slide, please, Alex. So this slide is a red D20, which says adventuring party, dream work makes the dream work. So I want to start with a quote that one of the players brought up in our debrief sessions after we concluded our game at OTU. The quote is from Desmond Tutu, and the quote is, "A person is a person through other persons." Experiencing one another, going on adventures, and having the ability to respond and change the story unfolding in front of you with the help of your fellow adventurers, that's what sets role-playing games like D&D apart from reading a really good book or watching your favorite movie. We asked two questions throughout the adventure, one early on and one near the end. The question we asked first is, what advice would you give your character? Players at OTU had answers like, look for family, don't be stubborn, remember that other people exist, ask for help, remember that you aren't alone, and get support from others. After spending 9 sessions worth of playing as their characters, and as the campaign began to wrap up, We turn the question back and we ask, what advice does your character have for you? We have answers like, don't lose hope. It's okay to take your time. Take pauses, be patient. Don't resist. Find your people. We see how important being part of something is, and it's evident as we play, the language that the players use to describe one another shift. It goes from, I ask my colleague or my teammate if they have anything that might be useful in this situation, and it becomes, I ask my friend, I look to my friends. Whatever you do, I have your back. I see how the language shifts, not even just in the way that the players refer to other characters in the party, but even the advice that their characters would give in comparison to the advice the players would give. It's like a call and response. So mechanically, the game of D&D supports this growing together as it puts obstacles in front of players that requires teamwork to overcome. And unlike real life, when major events may occur where people around you don't even notice, in D&D, we roll dice. When you or another character rolls well, it's a moment of celebration. Even online, when we are connected through screens, muted when it's not our turn, you still feel the camaraderie in the form of soundless clapping or emojis in the chat. And if you roll low, the game isn't over. Maybe your turn ends in failure, but the next player does something that changes, that stumble into something that nobody could have predicted. The game has a way of telling not just the stories you want told, but the stories that the dice want to tell. And the nice thing about the dice contributing is that chances are we all have stories about those critical failures that are usually accompanied by hilarious and beautiful hilarious and beautiful stories about how the team worked together to overcome and supported one another. Alex, you're muted.
And so as we look back on what we've talked about today, we look at some of the ways that individuals have had have experienced new things by learning to express themselves, develop new skills. We look at how groups have formed communities and come together. And we've looked at how imagination has offered new possibilities and new perspectives. And so we invite you to look and imagine what might be possible in the realm of games and stories. And so as we come to the end of another story in this presentation, we hope that you too will explore different ways in which imaginative games might lead to new expressions of self for those that you serve, new resources gathered in groups you support, and new possibilities discovered as you imagine a more hopeful world. And we leave this with you. May your dice always roll well, and may you be encouraged to find the new ways.
Thank you so much, Alex and Leanna. Do we have any questions from folks? Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Have a few minutes to talk further with our presenters. I'd just like to hear more about what kind of implications that you think that this could have, or where people may be able to implement this, especially kind of the connection with folks with disabilities.
Yeah, certainly. I think the thing that we've noticed and the thing that's most encouraging to us is the formation of how people are able to use trial and error in these games in a lower risk setting. It's really the imaginary game world that's held by both the game facilitator and the group of participants allow there to be groupthink, to slow down possible interactions, to look at how different perspective and different ways of approaching challenges can be used, and also to ask for advice, even in social interactions. In game, the opportunity to ask, hey, do you think I should do this? Or how would you do this instead is an option, as well as relying on community resources, as well as understanding that it's not just you in this particular circumstance. It's you and your support community that can back you up. And I think learning those types of skills is key, particularly, you know, as we mentioned, the idea of an employment opportunity where you're in an interview. It's not just necessarily you in that space being interviewed. It's you with your support network, with the people who've provided you with resources and suggestions of how best to interview. It's those people that you can go to afterwards and get kind of feedback and an understanding of maybe what happened in that interview, and even the opportunity in that interview to look at different perspectives, different resources that you may have. You may not feel particularly kind of charismatic in that moment, but maybe you've done your preparation instead with your accessibility team beforehand. And so how can you bring that community with you into a particular challenge is a great skill to have developed.
Thank you so much. There's some great questions in the chat. This first one reminds me of the first time that I played D&D and created characters with my kids. So you mentioned folks being really imaginative in creating their characters, like unicorns, but did you see them bringing personal elements about themselves, like ability, sexual orientation, etc., into their characters and use this imaginative world as a way of challenging and supporting their lived identities?
Yes, we certainly did. Leanna, do you want to take this one?
For sure, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I think that when given the chance to create a character, even if it feels so different from you, there are elements of yourself sort of in the aspects, and they also give you the opportunity to explore potentially hidden aspects or aspects that you want to try out. So we have a lot of folks using different pronouns, or especially like the more neutral they them pronouns, just as a way of stepping into that and seeing if it feels good. Sexual orientation, it really depends. In a lot of our games that doesn't really come up. We don't delve into like romantic relationships, but certainly in the way that people move through the game, there are ways of integrating that self into the character, even though there's a little bit of distance. It kind of gives you the bravery to kind of step into new choices. And that's sort of what the theme of this presentation was, is just finding new ways of doing things and feeling empowered to try new things. Like Alex said, when we get asked, like, can my character really like do that? Can we really like try to like, I don't know, kick open this door, like even though it's like welded shut? And Alex said very aptly, the response is generally, you can certainly try. And so I think that's a huge thing, is we give people the opportunity to try.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Sometimes you got to flirt with people in bars, so romance can come into it, you know. Okay, so Kirsten Dean asks, have you all personally explored or used TTRPGs designed for accessibility? I know there are a lot of options and ongoing projects. Do you have any recommendations about them?
Yeah, there are some fantastic options out there. Some recent Kickstarters that particularly focus on inclusion and accessibility. There are there's the combat wheelchair, which is a set of rule set for designing a character who uses a wheelchair. There are there are some great resources available. I see that Ron's also mentioned the D&D for All kit. Yeah, some great opportunities just to look at those things. I think as the community develops, and that's one of the reasons why we use Dungeons and Dragons, the community voice is large, and there is a significant voice in there in terms of different accessibility challenges that people face, and how to most accurately represent them in characters. We often invite people to only use those kind of components that they're kind of familiar with, and that they are most comfortable using. But there's definitely the opportunity to find some ways out there that you can represent yourself as you kind of present in reality in the fantasy game as well.
And I see that we're out of time, but there is some great affirmation for y'all in your presentation in the chat. Patricia Anderson describes son with multiple learning disabilities who used RPGs to learn basic reading and writing skills, and then that blossomed into becoming a DM himself, which helped with socialization and negotiation. So thank you so much for presenting this. This is a really exciting way to think about this game and about its uses. So I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and I hope everyone else has a great rest of your summit, and that you all find new ways to explore different ways of adding hope into your games and into your work.